Alright guys, this is going to be the commissioning, testing, and calibration chapter. It's going to be chapter 19. And what we're going to do here is basically the kossel comes with its own software that's configured for the mini kossel up to the point that it can be configured into. So what you have to do in this step is basically calibrate your specific printer. Like you have to register where exactly these end stops are, and you have to do that by interfacing with the Arduino and setting some standards in the code and such. So the first thing was I plugged the kossel in via my plate over here. This blue cord. We got it plugged into my laptop, which it installs right away. However, if you are using Windows 8, there are some complications with the Arduino because it doesn't use a digitally signed device or what have you, and Windows is automatically programmed to reject any unsigned device. There's some pretty easy YouTube videos, and there's some instructions on the Arduino forums how to disable this function on your machine so that you can get unsigned Arduino to work. I've already done all that, so right here we can see, well, you can't really see it, the selected right there. My Arduino is the Mega. Its COM is good. It's on COM 3, and its speed is set to what it's supposed to be. So following the instructions on the YouTube to disable digitally signed requirements for the Windows 8 works just fine. My Mega installed just fine and everything. So we're done there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up the program that communicates basically with the printer. It's called Pronterface. There's no install process for Windows. It just opens and is ready to run. So what we're going to do here is we're going to enter a series of commands to move the motors up to trigger the end stops, and then it will register where it's located, and we'll save that calibration. Okay, so we're in Pronterface now, which is the software that came with the kit. It's usually the default software that people use to communicate with 3D printers. It also came with the Marlin firmware, which is the controls for the Arduino. It's a clone, so it came preloaded onto it. We're going to need to make some configurations in the firmware also, but we'll do that later. Right now we're going to work on the end stops, which as before are right here, and also there's an end stop for the Z probe, which I have deployed because it's actually wired backwards. It's wired to basically, when it's triggered, it is reported as closed, and then the software reads it back to make sense of it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna see if these end stops are wired correctly, and then we're gonna trigger each end stop individually and make sure that it triggers closed when we trigger it, or triggers open when we don't trigger it. I'm not going to get too specific on the actual commands I'm going to be doing onto the computer. I kind of want the video to be focused on the kossel, not what I'm doing on the computer. If anybody has any questions about the software or the typing that's going on the computer, you feel free to ask in the comments, or you can go to the website that I'm building this off of. It's all open source, and you can look at the guide and the manual, and you can kind of manipulate it how you need to you know, to get what you need to get done. Okay, so we've connected to our printer and it looks like we're online. We're going to send M119 to check the end stops. Alright, so our end stop status is as followed. Our X-min is open. So everything's open. Everything's open, which is what it's supposed to be. The first M119 that you send is supposed to all read open. So now what we have to do is we have to test all the end stops to make sure they're wired correctly. So what we're going to do is first we're going to test the Z probe. So I'm going to zoom in here a bit. My Z probe right now is deployed, so I'm going to retract it. And there we go. So now the probe's retracted. We're going to resend M119 in pronterface. So now our Z minimum, which is our probe here, it's now triggered. So you see it's wired opposite. So when it's deployed, it's triggered as open, and when it's not deployed, it's wired as closed or triggered, whatever have you. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the Z motor, or the Z carriages. We're going to test the carriages individually now. And after each time we trigger the end stop, we're going to resend the code and make sure that it reads triggered. So we're going to start with the Z, which is the back one here. So we're going to leave that probe triggered, and we're going to resend M119. Alright, our Z probe is triggered. Z probe's triggered. Now this is actually the Z max probe we just triggered, and then the probe here is the Z minimum. So that worked. So we're going to bring that down, and now we're going to check the Y. I'm going to have to hold it here because it's not sticking. We'll check M119 again. Y max is now triggered. Check that. Let that one go, and we'll try our X. And our X is triggered. Alright, so all of our end stops are working, and they're all working correctly, so we can move on to the next step. Alright guys, so now what we need to do is we need to make sure our motors are moving the right direction, and we need to home them in. So we're going to need to start by plugging in power to our printer, which I'm going to be using this Dell power supply that came with my kit. It's a pretty heavy duty power supply. It's 12 volt, 18 amp. The plug's already wired, ready to go into my panel that I attached over here in a previous video. So I'm gonna attach some power and get going. Alright guys, I have my power now right over here. You can see it connected. There's a switch right here. Everything works. My PSU glows green when I switch it on, so I'm ready to home the motors. We're going to make sure that the directions are the right way. So impronter face, there's a little home button that you can hit to home all the printers, which will center the extruder. And what it will also do is it'll coordinate the motor movement. So you can either do that with this home button, or you can do it with the G28 command impronter face. So I don't know if my motors are wired correctly. I'm pretty sure they are, but just in case they're not, I'm going to be ready right here with by the power supply switch here, and once I send the command, if the motors start going the wrong way, I'm going to have to kill the power right away, undo the fixtures here, the heat bed and everything, pull them up and switch the motors around the other way, the motor wiring to the ramps board. So we're going to go ahead and start. So now we have power, and we're going to send G28. Looks like it worked. Now, motors are wired correctly. They went up like they should. So they went to home, which they found it, and then the extruder head centers. Now, on to the next step, which would be we need to make sure that the fans are all rotating correctly. The fan for the extruder is on right here. It should be blowing air through the extruder, through the aluminum heat sink. Little paper test here. It's definitely pulling air. Alright. And then we also have our, there should be another fan down here cooling the electronics, which I can feel right now, and it's blowing towards the ramps board, which is what we want. So the fans check out. They're wired correctly. Alright guys, now we're going to finish our last test of the electronics by heating up our hot end. And we're also going to heat up our heated bed, and we're going to make sure that they reach the target temperatures and that they hold at those target temperatures. So, what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to hit PLA 185 just to test that one. And then we're also going to set our heated bed here to 60. So now what we're watching is our extruder get hot. Okay, so this line right here, this blue line is our extruder. The red line down there is the bed. And then the line going across is the target temp that you set. So we're right at our target temp for our extruder. Looks like it just got a little too hot. Now it's coming back down. The bed's warm. So, looks like our bed and our extruder are both at the target temps now. They're both holding pretty true. I feel the bed warm. It's hard to feel the warmth off the extruder because the fan's cooling it. So I'm gonna back out here. So now that our graph is showing us that our temp is true, I'm going to use a non-contact thermometer, and we're going to check that it's heated correctly, that these thermistors are working. Alright, everything looks good.